Hi, guys. So, for your lesson today, we're going to go over some information about culture, get some definitions and examples of what culture really is, and what all other things we can talk about when we talk about culture. So, first thing you need to do is if you have any, you need to get out your culture notes. They look like what is on the screen. If you don't have them, which is not a big deal, you just need to get out a piece of paper and then pause this video and copy down that lovely little table right there. And then we'll be filling that out as you go through this lesson. Remember, at any time, if you have questions, send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So, culture. Culture is a set of beliefs, customs, values, behaviors, and practices that a group of people have in common. I know that's a pretty long definition. Just kind of think about it for a second. And anytime you need to pause the video while you're copying down notes, you have that ability. So do that. So again, culture is a set of beliefs, customs, values, behaviors, and practices that a group of people have in common. So examples could be, if you think about it, so beliefs. Beliefs could be your beliefs on how a government should run. It could be the beliefs of your religion. Customs would be things that you do on a normal basis. So customs could be things like maybe you celebrate Thanksgiving. And every Thanksgiving, you always meet with your family and have a big dinner. Values would be things that you think are important. What you believe is important, someone else may not. So values would be what you consider valuable and what you think is important. Behaviors are just different behaviors that you may have. Like in some cultures, when people greet each other, they kiss both cheeks. We don't really see that here a lot in the United States, and especially here around Indianapolis where we live. Practices would just be, different activities that you have in common with other people, like a sport. You like to play soccer, for example. So there's lots of different things that can make a culture. And we're going to talk about some of those the rest of today. So some different examples of culture, as I mentioned, what type of religion or not that you may be, the different types of food that you may eat, music, because there's Ed. I do like Ed. The music anyway. And it could be how people dress. It could be a sport or activity that they play. The picture on the bottom right, you also have her giving up the peace sign. The peace sign is part of culture. People use that. How you wave at someone is different, or how you greet someone is different in different places. And what one gesture that we, have in the United States may not be a gesture they have somewhere else, and they may not know what that means, and so on. I forgot to mention on your table, it's asking you for examples. So I just gave you quite a few, and it asks you to list at least 3, so you should have wrote those down. If you didn't, rewind this a little bit and go back and do that. A cultural trait is an idea or a way of doing things that is common, or an activity or behavior in which people often take part. A lot of the times, culture traits might be considered to be norms, which is like a behavior that is considered normal in a particular society. I mentioned earlier the peace sign. The peace sign would be a culture trait. The people I mentioned earlier about when they greet each other and they kiss each other on the cheeks, that's a culture trait. Eating with chopsticks, that's a culture trait for some cultures. Culture traits are often things that are passed down from one generation to the next. We learn from the people that we are around. It could be the people at school, our friends. It could be who we live with, our family. And that's a lot of the times where a lot of these culture traits and these norms come from. You are taught that as you grow up. History and environment can also affect how cultures develop. If certain things happen, or the way you live in life, can influence how your culture develops from one generation to the next. What was important in the culture of your grandma may be different from you, for example. Cultural diversity. Cultural diversity is the state of having a variety of cultures in the same area. Now, to me, that's a really good thing because you can learn a lot from people that aren't like you. And you can share ideas and share those customs and share those norms and those culture traits and end up, changing a little bit of the way that you are because you were friends with someone that was from a different culture than you. Now, sometimes that can lead to conflict. I've got a picture over here. It's an Israeli flag, and you've got Palestinians and Israelis, Jewish people that are fighting over that flag. And that's something that we'll talk about when we talk about the Middle East, because sometimes you have different cultures that live in the same area, but they don't get along very well. And that can lead to war and conflict. So we'll be talking about that as the year goes by. Another word to know is cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion is the spread of culture traits from one region to another. So some examples that I have in the pictures: food. There's different types of food that cultural diffusion has happened to. One of them is McDonald's. So McDonald's is an American staple, something that starts here in America, but yet there's McDonald's all over the world. So McDonald's has spread from one region to another. Like the example of that picture, that's a McDonald's in the middle of the Middle East. That would be a cultural diffusion. It's gone from America to all over the world. Another example would be jeans. Jeans started in California during the California Gold Rush. So they're an American cultural trait. However, they have spread around the world. No matter where you go in the world, jeans can be there and people would wear them. So that would be another example of cultural diffusion. And then you have culture regions. Culture regions are areas in which a single culture or trait is very dominant. I have a picture down at the bottom. You've got your crawdads and your corn and like your Creole atmosphere in the United States. Creole food down in Louisiana. Louisiana has its very own kind of culture region. The South has a very culture region. The West, culture region. I have another picture over on the right. You have areas of China. China could be a culture region, things that they have there, traits that are very, very dominant. You recognize them because they belong to a certain region of the world. And then you do get cultural change. You can change and your culture can change over time. Sometimes that's brought on by innovation. My culture changed. When I was your age, I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have phones besides the ones that are in our house. Innovation has helped my culture change. Now I don't really have a home phone. Everything goes through the phone. Contact with other people. That can help change your culture too. Maybe you see different viewpoints and you agree with them and you think highly of them more than what you're used to. So your contact with different people through cultural diversity can change your culture. Now that should have went through those definitions for you in that table and given you examples of each thing. If you can't think of others and you don't have 3, look it up on the internet. Come up with a few other different examples on your own. Now, when you go back out of here and you go back into the lesson for today, you should watch a video that looks like this. It's going to go over a few of the things that we've talked about, different culture. And then it's also going to explain, some of the different cultures around the world. If you have questions, please email me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have a great day.